Good evening. You're watching the Jungle Gyms podcast. Today is Bank Holiday Monday, the 30th of August, and it is the day after the first Celtic and Rangers game of the domestic season. So we're going to be talking about that, the post-match reaction, and we're also going to be touching on the Europa League review for the draw that's been made, and we'll also be talking about the transfers. We've got deadline day closing tomorrow, so a few things to discuss. Tonight, so we're joined by Paddy and McGinty, guys. How yous doing?
Yeah, well. Great to be here. Great to be doing another podcast. Nice busy week and a weekend working, but also good to see a game of football yesterday.
Nice one. And like a true jungle gym, you're just back from safari. How was that?
I am indeed a little Far East effort from South Korea this week, guys. This is their, I think, current season, depending on how you want to look at international football, but their current away top. Quite an interesting design, I think. Not quite tiger print, but that's for another
Is
story,
it
for another conversation.
is it Badger print?
It is indeed. How you feeling there,
Right.
Paddy?
As rough as a Badger's arse,
I
mate.
thought you were.
Aye, absolutely.
Is your man Key still playing for South Korea?
I wouldn't think so. I'll
No?
not pretend that I'm caught up on all the ins and outs of Korean football of any kind. Too many football
Right.
clubs to be that intrigued. But is Key not pushing into his mid-30s now? Maybe 32, 33? I wouldn't be
Probably.
surprised if he's still playing.
But he was hardly one of those guys who had a lot of mileage on the clock. You know, he hardly like ran about. I know that
No,
he wanted to be the Keyard, but he was hardly that type of player, was he?
no. He never ran or burst a gut, but I'd be surprised if he was still playing international football.
Maybe if
He's
he
my
did run about.
he's my second least favourite South Korean that played for Celtic after Chadu Ree.
Don't ya?
Did we
Yeah,
have any others?
Don't ya? Key, obviously.
I mean, other than those two.
That's why I said my second least. I mean, I just remember
So you should-
that Chad.
so you should-
I just remember that Chad Uri one where he scored the own goal in the Europa League. For about 45 years out, tries to pass it back to Foster. It runs by Foster into the net, and he just turns around and he's just laughing.
Was it no Chad Dury, or am I thinking maybe El Kaduri? The guy who came down the left wing from left back, and he took a shot of some kind that just kind of trundled in against Rangers one day.
El Kaduri,
The
but
El
I think we
Kaduri.
lost that game anyway.
I think we might have
he-
as well. It was a weird goal because it's a save that any keeper should have made, but it just kind of trundled all the way through.
That was the one that Gary Hooper scored that absolute belter, kind of for the same end of the park.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
kind of hot a banana shot, but literally right around McGregor. Brilliant.
Aye. Well, that kind of brings us back full circle then to talk about the Celtic and Rangers game. Guys, going into it, we've not had the best record of late. So last time we actually beat Rangers was the 1st of September 2019. How times have changed, man. And since then, we've played them 7 times, and we've only actually scored 3 goals against them. During those 7 games, we've only actually achieved one draw. Apart from that, we've been on defeat after defeat. So, unfortunately, as you fully well know by now, Celtic actually lost yesterday's game to Rangers. It was 1-0. It was a Felipe Jota headed goal in the second half. But going into the game, Paddy, how were you feeling? Were you optimistic?
Mate, I was optimistic. I just thought that looking at that other team, they almost seem to crumble anytime an opposition team has a go at them and it doesn't give them a minute to pass the ball about. So I thought that with our kind of football and philosophy that we've been going with, if Andrews came in, that would have caused them a lot of problems, which it did the first half. You looked at the lineup and you were I had a bit of surprise with Geranovic starting at left back,
You
which
called it, mate. You
I
called
mean, I
it.
predicted it last week. What can I say? Starfelt was switched over to the left again, him and
True.
Welsh. And you had Eddie starting up front. Kyogo was put out to the left.
What do
I
you
was a
think
wee
prompted?
bit.
What do you think prompted Starfelt going back to the left? Was it? Do you think to match up against Morelos?
I'm not quite sure, to be honest, because he played the previous 2 games to that over on the right hand side of the defence, and it was a lot better.
Yeah, I seem to remember more tussles between Welsh and Morelos rather than Starfelt. Starfelt was policing Roof, I think, a few more times in that game. McGinty, just to kind of go over the lineup anyway. So at the back, we've got Hart and goals. Juranovic, as Paddy said, at left back. We had Starfelt and Welsh at centre back, and of course Ralston playing at right back. So quite brave to bring in Juranovic at that point. You had Greg Taylor, who's been injured, and he's actually pulled out the Scotland squad now for the international break. Some people thought that Monty would have played at left back, although he did come on late in the second half. So that was your defence, and going into the midfield, you've got McGregor, Turnbull, and Christie. And up front, we had Eddie through the middle, Kyogo left forward, and Abada as the right forward. How did you feel about that lineup?
When I saw it, I actually felt quite comfortable. It felt solid and nigh on the best we could muster for the circumstances. We obviously, as per most games this season, the backline being the kind of weak point, so we're kind of almost accepting it. But slowly but surely, we're seeing Ralston become better. We're seeing Juranovic coming into the left back, obviously to help out just now. And Welsh, Starfelt and Hart kind of cementing the places, if you can call it that by default. So you get a little bit more confident out of the backline, which I think we saw them playing quite well in this game. And I think you can see that confidence building. But on the whole, for the lineup, I was confident. I was happy. I didn't have very many questions about it. Although I think we're all going to discuss, as Ange has seemingly already admitted to, the change that should have happened up front and on the left. With Kyogo and Edward. Maybe perhaps Christie should have been out on the left with Kyogo through the middle. But that's in hindsight, to be honest. I don't think anybody really honestly can hold their hands up and say he got it wrong at kickoff.
Much was made about the Rangers lineup because obviously they had a setback with COVID. I think it was two players who actually contracted the virus, and then you had a number of other people who had to self-isolate. So Gerrard, of course, the manager, he had to watch it presumably from home. But they started with McCrory in goals, the 21-year-old. I think he's been out on loan to a few teams. So he started in goals because you had McGregor and McLaughlin as the two other goalies for Rangers. They were out, and you had the right back Tavernier, captain. He was out, and of course his understudy Nathan Patterson, who I'll give the boy credit, he does look a tidy player. He was out as well. So they brought in Balogun, who I think is predominantly a centre back, but he played at right back. And as fate would have it, he just had to win man of the match, didn't he? So you've got him as right back, you've got Goldson, Hollander at centre back, Barisic as the left back. Midfield, you had Aribo, Davis, and Kamara, and up front, you had Roof, Morelos, and Kent. So even with their setbacks, I think it really goes to show their superiority when it comes to strength and depth. Even when I looked at their lineup against Alishkert, I was thinking, even though they've got a few players out, they've still got a strong squad. And yes, certainly on paper, it kind of matched up that way. So Paddy, going into the first half, it was a good start for Celtic. We were quite tidy in possession, and I forget what the possession was at half time, but the possession overall for Celtic was like 66% in our favour to their 34. Of course, it doesn't win you games, that possession alone. But I was quite buoyed by the fact that we were keeping the ball for the majority of it, and for a majority of the first half, we really shut up the animals at Ibrox. At times, they never really had anything to shout about because we were keeping the ball off them, dominating play at certain times. Were you quite happy? Were you quite surprised at that?
It's a surprise, no, because that's, as I say, that's the way that we've been playing. You look at the start of the first half. I mean, they had the first kind of chance of the game, the one where Morelos hooked the ball kind of over the bar, which was a bit more dangerous when you looked at it in the replay. But I thought that we grew from strength to strength in that match. The first half. I mean, I know early on in the podcast I certainly slated Tony Ralston, but I thought it was brilliant the first half. I thought he defended excellently, I thought he attacked well, his passing was great, his commitment was exceptional. You looked at Juranovic on the other side, he looked pretty tidy, although he had to start off at left back. He's predominantly right-footed, you know what I mean? So he had to cut inside a lot more, which is kind of slowing down the attack on the left-hand side, but it was opening up space in the middle of the park.
Definitely,
Um,
aye. It was painfully obvious that he's a right-footed player, but he was playing at left back. So there was quite a number of times that he did check and play it across the defence. And saying that Taylor, our first choice left back, he checks plenty of times anyway. And I think he normally does struggle against the higher calibre of opposition. But I thought Juranovic, for his debut, he got chucked in at the deep end. He didn't let the team down. He didn't let himself down. Thought it was a solid enough performance. So fair play to the boy. So just getting into the game, the first kind of flashpoint for me, that was on like the 19th minute. Ralston, he floated in a cross from the right, and it was poorly cleared, a header by Goldson, and it fell to Kyogo. He was at the left-hand side of the box, and he managed to size it up, and he tried to put in a curling effort, but unfortunately it was a few yards wide. But at that point, I'm like, yes, Kyogo, I want to see more of that. The 25th minute, we had Abada. He found a great pocket of space in the Rangers half, and that was between the defence and the midfield. At that point, he turned and he played that great through ball to Kyogo. Kyogo, first time, he passed it across the face of the goal. And at that point, Edward, inexplicably, he went for it with his wrong foot. From what I could see, it looked to hit off his heel, and it just trickled out for a goal kick. I couldn't believe that, Paddy. What were you thinking at that point?
Mate, I was cussing him. But when you look at the replay, it's a bit more flattering for him because, as you say, the ball's come in and he's tried to open up his foot to obviously get it on target into the Rangers goal. Unfortunately, he just went a wee bit too early, try to kick it, and it's hit off his heel. It's just one of the unfortunate ones, but again, would Edward have missed that if it had been in kind of full Eddie form for Celtic? Do you know what I mean? Is that just one of the gilt edge chances? Is that just the luck of the dice? I don't know.
Totally, mate. Yeah, it's really characteristic of Eddie of the last maybe 18 odd months. And again, like the full first half, a lot of good possession from Celtic, but we didn't carve enough opportunities. And it kind of summed it up in the 45th minute, just before half time. Eddie, he manages to get a one-on-one with Hollander, and they're retreating into the Rangers box. And Eddie, if he was on prime form, then you would imagine that he's got the tools in the locker to take it past, make that yard a space, and put in a shot and hopefully score. But he was up against Hollander, and Hollander just nicked it off him. It was like taking a candy for a baby. I don't know if it's confidence. I don't know if his head is just not in the right place. McGinty, our first half is really, really disappointing when you're at Ibrox. You've got the lion's share of possession. You don't make it count. What were you thinking at half time after seeing us pass up those chances?
I was confident still at that point. You see, the first half was exciting enough. I felt like we took our foot off the gas a little bit overall in the scheme of the start of this season. We weren't as high pressing and intense in our tempo and trying to hurry the ball back off them. But I felt like it was almost planned as a game management thing, just to try and see us through the game and just kind of be a little bit more reserved with it. But it felt like something was building as we got into half time. You see, you had opportunities by Edward there where I just think he opened his foot up at the wrong angle. If he was 5 yards further back, that's going in sort of thing. He's trying to guide it in at that shot rather than put his laces through it. I think if he was trying to put his laces through it, he would have used his left foot, to be honest. And we know he can use both feet. But overall, everything was building towards something. We had the momentum, I think, in the first half. It was definitely our game. It's after that where it just went to pot for me. Second half didn't start the way I wanted it to. But at the half time, I was still confident. I still thought once we got the first goal, we might have seen 2 or 3 coming in.
See when we were the crowd I was with, sitting watching it, I did say that we obviously looked the more dominant team, and we did look as if we were going to score a goal. But I did say I think we need to score the goal before half time, because if we don't score, and although they've kind of been sitting off and just kind of soaking up everything that we had to offer, if we don't score, they go into the dressing room at half time and they get a chance to regroup, obviously, but they'll turn around and say to themselves, listen, these guys have came here, given it all that, Ange ball this and Ange ball that, they're flung their best at us and they still can't score. So for me, that looked as if it what happened, because as soon as they came out for the second half, it was totally different. It was a different animal.
They started the second half definitely different, and I think if we look at the stats properly, I think maybe Gavin has some a bit more stats at hand. But I remember reading them after the game. Our passing accuracy, our passing overall numbers, our possession numbers, everything in that game was practically in our favour. That we were seemingly controlling the overall game. We had more passes, considerably more passes, considerable amount of more possession. Everything should have been in our favour. It's almost like when you see it, you would wonder on paper by numbers, why did Celtic not win that game? Why did they not get a goal? Why was it not at least a 1-1 draw or something like that? But I think the reason why we didn't get to the front attacking form that we kind of been used to is that the game was fought in the middle, too dogged by them as well, which is credit to them to some degree. Pains us to obviously say that. I mean, you have to hold your hands up, we didn't win the game. But I don't think we controlled it enough, even with the possession that we had, because they were doing what they do best in football, which is disrupt play. And I don't mean this too negatively, although it is obviously a negative to their standard of football. But their aim is to disrupt play. They look to make challenges that are, you get away with. They look to put the ball out for throw-ins and stuff. Just stop the momentum building. So we had all the possession, we had all the good passes, but nothing was able to get forward. And I think in that first 10 minutes of that second half, as Paddy was saying, they probably went in at halftime and said, well, they've thrown everything at this and they're not doing anything with it. And they've probably got a little bit of energy behind them. And they've just started to go in a little bit harder. You saw Morales and Roof, the way they play, they kind of playing for fouls and stuff, just again disrupting the play. I just felt they upped that ante a little bit more, and it just broke our rhythm. And as soon as we lost that rhythm, it was like going back to the Europa League game. We couldn't get a foot on the ball again, and that was us out.
Aye, before we go on to the goal, mate, I wanted to ask you about your opinion on Ange's ability to effect change during the game. Even going back to the second leg away in Holland to AZ Alkmaar, they had the lion's share of possession. The only thing that they were failing to do was to create that opening. Obviously, we gave them two silly goals from our perspective. But in the second half, I was hoping that Ange would be able to have a halftime team talk with the guys and bring out a new mentality. Don't know, change the shape, get people more involved. So I was hoping again in the second half at Rangers that we would at least continue on, maybe become more effective. But Rangers' tails were up at that point. I don't know what Gary McAllister said, but they just had to play better because they weren't that good in the first half. I was disappointed with the way that we started the second half. The first 15 minutes was total domination for Rangers. I'm It's far too early to say, but I would like to see a wee bit more proactive decisions by Postecoglou.
I've been impressed with his substitutions that he's made through a number of games. I feel like he's made the correct substitutions at times. He's made them at reasonably okay times and stuff like that, which is a slight that we'd always throw at Neil Lennon last season. They would leave things too late and it would just be the same old same. But I've been impressed with how Ange, during a game, can seemingly change the personnel, and he knows when to bring on Roderick or Sorrow for the midfield to try and slow the game down and understand that we don't have the energy for the last 15 minutes and stuff to slow it down and kind of shore it up a little bit. And it's worked in parts. I've not seen yet, and I think this is maybe where you're alluding to more, Gavin, I've not seen yet that passion in the halftime team talk to come back out rejuvenated with a fire in your belly. I'm not seeing that coming yet, which is not a slight at this point because we all love what we're seeing so far. But at some point, the team needs motivation. They need that fire. They need the thunder. They need the raw. They need the whatever you want to call it from previous years. They need something to come out again when things aren't going our way.
Well, let's get to the goal then. So on the 66th minute, it was a Barisic corner, and it was Helander who scored the headed goal. So whenever it went in, I believe that a few people have been blaming Starfelt for it. So I've actually watched it back from a few different angles. So I'm just going to give you guys my take on it. Like, it'll be ironic if none of you are blaming Starfelt for it. But the marking from Celtic, it was part zonal, part man marking as well. Now, there was a cluster of about four Celtic, not about four, there was a cluster of four Celtic players, and they were matching up against four Rangers players. However, Helander was a few yards detached from that. Helander started off at the edge of the box, and our four Celtic players then attached themselves to the three Rangers players. And whenever the corner came in, at that point, the seven players progressed retreated back towards the Celtic goal. Now, Starfelt was clearly marking Connor Goldson. Whenever the ball comes in, at that point, he just has to jump up and detach himself from Goldson, try and jump up and win the header. But Helander has got the advantage because no one has been man marking him, and he's got a run and jump. He can see the ball clearly, and he doesn't have anyone impeding his view. He has the advantage because he's got a run and jump. He's obviously going to get more elevation than what Starfelt does. Starfelt is just taking some criticism from certain quarters because he was the closest Celtic defender there. However, Helander makes good contact and it goes beyond heart. That was my observation of the goal. I wouldn't attach blame to Starfelt. Paddy, what's your own? Looks like you might be disagreeing with me already. So let me hear your thoughts, mate.
Well, obviously, when I was watching the game live, I thought at first it was totally Starfield, but since I've watched the replays, it's almost the same kind of observations as yourself, Gav. So Barisic takes the corner for the right hand side of the pitch. Just before the ball comes in, you've got the two clusters, so you've got three Celtic players, and you've got, I think it's 3 or 4 of that crowd. And then as soon as the ball comes in for Barisic, like Stephen Welsh actually detaches for the crowd and goes into the penalty spot for some reason. So he actually runs away for the defenders, right? Starfelt comes back, but at that he's kind of sandwiched in between Goldson, who's at the front of him, and Highlander's coming in at the back. And I can't mind who it was. It was the third, kind of the ones behind him. But the ball comes in, and again Starfelt, who I thought had a reasonably good game yesterday compared to how he's played previously, but it looked to me as if he got his high heel stuck in the grass when he tried to jump for the ball. It was for me, even in the replays I'm looking at it, was quite a pitiful attempt to try and win the header. Again, as you say, Helander gets the run on him, so he's got the advantage, if you want to call it that. But still, I mean, Starfelt just jumps up, and it looks as if he turns into a turtle. His head kind of just comes down like that. Do you know what I mean? Rather than go up to try and header the ball. So I was frustrated with that. But as I say, that would be the only kind of fault that I would lay at his door for the goal. But definitely the defensive organisation was very, very poor. As I say, I don't know why Stephen Welsh actually runs away from the cluster. I know you said earlier, like it was kind of half zonal, half kind of man. I've kind of had a few disagreements with a few people today, obviously. In regards to that, for me, it was almost as if they never started off zonal. They kind of matched up man for man, but then they moved back into a zone.
Yeah, I mean, those players. So it was Ryan Christie, Ralston, Welsh, and Starfelt. They were going man for man. However, we had 4 to their 3 because the fourth Rangers player was Helander, who completely detached. However, we had other players who were going zonal at that point. People like McGregor, people like Edwards. By the way, Edwards is one of our more tall players. I think it just shows that he doesn't have the appetite for maybe winning balls in the air. That's why he was doing a zonal thing. I think personally, Welsh detached because at that point you had Balogun, you had Goldson, and you had Morelos, and as soon as they advanced, they kind of split up as well. That's
You see them. See, watch it again right when we come off. See where the two clusters was. Obviously, you had the Rangers mob there and the Celtic kind of on the back feet away for the goal. As soon as the ball comes in, they all start to run forward, except for Welsh. Welsh detaches away, right? He runs into the penalty spot, and then as soon as the ball comes in, he almost goes like that and looks on, tries to run back into the cluster. So it looks as if to me he's just detached for the crowd and just went on the Lone Ranger. But even when I look at Starfield, I know some people probably say was man marking, but if you're man marking a player, you're getting tight to him. Starfield just kind of moved back into the area with the ball coming. So that's why I'm kind of thinking, do you know what I mean? It was more zonal, although they never started off static. They weren't lined up like Savio players. You know what I mean? But again, poor effort at heading.
Better communication anyway, especially if you've got 4 Celtic players and 4 Rangers players. Who was maybe marking Hillander? That's my question. McGinty, would you attach any blame towards Joe Hart for the actual goal?
No, I wouldn't attach blame to anybody, to be honest. When it comes to set piece goals, it's kind of hard to blame people unless there's blatantly clear, obvious mistakes where somebody totally loses a man in a man marking situation. I think you've both alluded quite well, not alluded, you've both confirmed quite well, that Starfelt was marking somebody, and it wasn't Highlander. Obviously, he's came from a running position, he's got the higher jumping on Starfelt, and Starfelt's clearly not being aware that he's there. I think it comes down to just, and it's surprising to say it for what is he, 26 years old, lack of experience. It's a mistake that you expect Stephen Welsh to do, and maybe we can attribute some blame to Stephen Welsh with the missing the time of the run and not knowing where people went. That's what you expect from somebody who's only been basically playing at this level for 12 months. Starfelt's excuse for it seems a bit less because he's 26, he's played a couple of years in Russia, he's played in Sweden and whatnot. He should be able to do this properly. He should have been aware of other people around him. Even if he's man marking one person, he should still be somewhat aware of what's happening around him. And he had no idea that Helander had ran in behind him and Helander had got that jump on him. He jumped up to go for the ball. He didn't know somebody was behind him. Paul getting the ball again. It's a mistake that is a lesson learnt, but I think it's harsh to blame anybody specific for something that is a set piece which it happened. That it would be extremely harsh to lay all the blame at Starfelt, I think, in that one, especially when you consider for the whole game as well. I think he did quite well. I think the whole backline actually played quite well. As we said earlier in the start of the podcast, guys, Jovanovic at left back, I thought done really well considering throwing at the deep end, and as you said, Gavin right back and right footed as well. I think both Welsh and Starfelt done well not to get drawn into the games that Roofing Morelos were playing, which was trying to completely win free kicks and penalties and get somebody sent off at some point. And I think Hart, which I'm going to bring it in now, I think he done really well in showing his command of the backline at times, especially when it came to free kicks. As a moment, I think it was just before half time, there's a free kick, and you could see him shouting at the backline to get 3 men in the wall to move it to the side. He was taking real. He looked really fucking pissed off, to be honest, that they weren't doing what he was telling. Maybe they just couldn't hear him, sort of thing. But seeing that vocal passion and aggression in his face to get what he needs from that wall to do it, that's something that I love to see. And it worked. The free kick came in, he pitches himself fine, he just collected the ball. It was fun. It wasn't a fantastic save or anything, but it's fantastic to see that he organised it properly. And I think, as I've said before, we're seeing this build with Joe Hart and with the backline slowly but surely. We're seeing the confidence coming in, and I would give credit to the backline overall that they actually did, on the whole, look quite solid yesterday.
Before we kind of finish off the remaining events of the game, because that's pretty much our attacking failure at the end of the game. But I just want to kind of build on that, McGinty, what you're saying. I personally thought Starfelt had a good game. I know that some people will disagree. I have been a big critic of him so far this season, but he surprised me. So I'm going to give him praise whenever it is due. From my perspective, I know a lot of people will disagree, but apart from that, I think the defence acquitted themselves fairly well. There was no Mickey Mouse errors, which they have been known for. I think a lot of people were anticipating that both defences were leaky, and that's where the goals would come. I thought they acquitted themselves quite well. So I'm just going to point that out. But yeah, to kind of move on from that. So what happened here? On the 67th minute, so right after that, Turnbull and Eddie were replaced by Rogic and Soro. And I thought that Rogic would have been the antidote for this, because in our final third, I felt we were missing that killer pass. I thought that he would be able to kind of cause some change, and it was probably the right decision not to start him anyway, because I think with his athleticism, it hampers our ability to press, and I think it was right for him to come on as a sub rather than start the game. But yeah, to talk about the kind of the events that finished off the game. So Kyogo was played through by Ralston. Ralston actually intercepted it quite well from defence. He played through quite a cute ball, evaded the, I think it was Hilander, the Rangers defender. Kyogo runs onto it and he's sprinting full pelt, but McCrory, give the boy credit, the goalkeeper, he comes out as well and he makes it difficult for Kyogo. Kyogo gets to it first, but he can't really do much with it, and it deflects off McCrory. So that was a good block from the young Rangers goalkeeper. But a few more involvements from Kyogo as well. So what have we got here? In the 85th minute, Rogic plays in Kyogo down the right-hand side of the box, and he shoots from an angle. Instead, it would have been better to flash it across goal, where Christie was screaming out for it. And you could see from the angle, Christie was not offside. He would have been in a perfect opportunity to just side foot it into the net. But Kyogo, he must have got tunnel vision. He shot from an angle. McCrory saved it, and Christie was going apeshit. He was not happy with that, and that probably affected his decision making at the next event. So that was in the 85th minute. But 2 minutes after that, in the 87th minute, Kyogo fed in a very, very similar position, and this time it was from Soro. Again, into the box, probably an even better position than the last one, but similar again to the right. And at this point, his decision making was just askew. At that point, he looks to square it, and the only person who's in his vicinity is Montgomery. Probably, I guess the inverted winger here, where the inverted fullback, where we're seeing more of that. But he doesn't even look up properly. He plays it to Monty, and the Rangers defender manages to clear it. So on both occasions, Kyogo made the wrong decisions, and it was just heartbreaking to see. And that kind of summed it up from us. We were doing maybe the right things, but we just weren't executing it. Paddy, what was your opinion at that point, mate?
Uh, it was one of the ones you were screaming at the telly. So Edwards came off for Rogic and Turnbull came off for Soro. I thought Turnbull was awful, absolutely awful. The game totally bypassed him. And the longer that he stayed on, you could see their midfield of Davis predominantly, beside Aribo and Kamara. They started to take control, whereas obviously Turnbull was just a total empty jersey. But as you say, the first one, Kyogo, he had now been moved centrally to off the wing. Again, his movement was really, really good again, and you see why he needs to start in that central role. But the first shot, he just squared it definitely across to Christie. But again, that's a flashpoint. Do you know what I mean? It's easy for us to say that watching the replays and looking at it from that angle, but the second one, I think it was almost as if he was trying to make up for his first error where he just squared it, and then he's tried to square it instead of shooting. Do you know what I mean? And then you're like that, oh no, just shoot. You know what I mean? But it just looks as if he's one of the types of players who he'll try, if he makes a mistake, he'll try and make up for it for the team. Do you know what I mean? So see him trying to square it. That was definitely him trying to make up for the error. I know passing his teammate. For the second one. So again, unfortunate, but I was positive coming out that if he continues to play through the centre and he continues to show that movement, and our midfield start to get a wee bit sharper and getting the boss through him, then we're going to be far more successful in that area of the pitch.
McGinty, whenever we were doing our last episode, I think it was the last one, I think it was after we beat St Mirren, one of my comments was that I was happy that Abada got 2 goals because my opinion was the boy's very talented. Let's kind of caveat that with the fact that he's only 19 years old and he's for Israel. But to the boy's credit, he looks a really talented player. He's got lightning speed. So using that to great effect, he can terrorise defenders. But my point was after the St Mirren game, I was happy to see him go on the score sheet and get more involved because I think the boy's got it and he will show more of what he's got. But I want to see more involvement from him in games. I think too often he's neglected out in the right wing. He doesn't shout for the ball enough. Maybe he's not coming in inside enough. Something like Forrest does that, of course. But saying that in Forrest's career, it took him a while before Celtic fans really kind of accepted him as a game changer. So maybe kind of the same theme for the Celtic and Rangers game. So Abada was, for the large part, anonymous. When did Abada come off? The 86th minute, he came off and he was replaced by Monte. Uh, what was your thoughts?
I like Abada. I'm going to give you a couple of stats. Just want to bring them up very quickly. He's scored 4 goals and he's had 3 assists so far. And as you say, for a 19-year-old, that's fantastic, to be honest. I think we need to remember that he is only 19, so he's going to have moments where, like yesterday, the game's going to go over the top of him. He's going to be maybe overawed by the occasion, maybe outmuscled at times and whatnot. It wasn't his best performance, it wasn't his best game, but I think we all need to take a moment and remember, as you said, he is only 19. He probably could have came off sooner, to be honest. I think it was quite obvious that he wasn't being effective in that game. Likewise, with Kyogo on the left, I think we all acknowledged early on that that wasn't his best position. He is much more suited to play through the middle. And as I say that, knowing what we're going to talk about eventually in the podcast here, I think Kyogo is already the Edouard replacement, as we like to discuss it. We're looking at a guy who we can clearly see in those last 15-20 minutes yesterday playing through the middle. Feed the ball through to him and he will do damage. He had 3 opportunities as soon as he went through the middle. Had 3 opportunities. He really could have scored 2 of them, or set up one of them, and vice versa. I'm going to make a point on this one here. I'm going to go on a rant, guys. I do apologise for it, but as you're discussing it, I want to weigh in my worth of the Kyogo incidents of those 2 goals, and my worth is Ryan Christie can go fuck himself. That was pathetic the way that he acted, in my opinion. I know it sounds funny. I know people will agree with me. I know people will definitely disagree with me. But that reaction from Ryan Christie from the first one where Kyogo didn't play him in, I think that was disgraceful from him. Considering earlier on in the game he's putting the ball over the bar, hitting Rose Ed and stuff like that. It was very, very egotistical and very greedy of him to want that ball there. I can see why he wants it. He was a goal scorer. He wants to get the ball.
It's for the good of the team. It's for the good of the team.
No, of course it is. But look at Kyogo. 7 goals in 7 games. Kyogo's the informed player going through the middle of that team there. He's through and goal. It's a clear shot that he can take. Plenty of strikers in his position have scored that goal from that position before. And McCrory makes a great save with his foot. It gets deflected out. It should have been left that somebody should have followed up on it. Christie's a bit too far forward making his run, which is fine. I'm not going to criticise him for that. He's making the forward run as well. But he's making the forward run to get the ball past him. He's not playing for the team, in my opinion, there. And his reaction, the throwing of the arms, the shouting at Kyogo, he shouted continuously over to Kyogo as if he'd done something majorly wrong. When, let's be honest, Kyogo had every right to take that shot. It was a good save as well. He had every right to take that shot. And it definitely, as Paddy says, that definitely played on his mind when it came to the next opportunity where he squared it because he felt he had to make it up to somebody. He felt like a bit of square. That was the mistake the last time. I'll correct it now. And it ended up being the wrong decision again. But for me, that was down to Ryan Christie. The way he reacted put that in his head. So, yeah, for me, Ryan Christie, not at fault for not scoring the goals, but at fault for manipulating the next thought process on Kyogo. And he was definitely wrong in how he acted, because Ryan Christie has been one of the greediest players we've had in the last year and a half, 2 years. And he skied a ball as well from pure greed. He's got nobody to. He can't shout at anybody for that, for taking a clear opportunity on goal. No, he's no time for that there.
Paddy, I would imagine your reaction would have been far more diplomatic in the pub watching that. How would be a more eloquent way to criticise your teammate in this modern day of football?
I'm speechless to that one, actually. Yeah, I'm absolutely speechless. Listen, I can see where you're coming from, right? If the guy's been a bit, let's say, enthusiastic about showing his disappreciation for not getting the ball squared to him. But if you look at it, the best thing for the team would have been for Kyogo to square it to Christie. If he squares it, mate, it's a goal. It's a goal.
100%, I totally agree. But he's in form.
No, I know. Listen, I can see what you're saying. That if he's got his eye on the goal, you know what I mean. If he takes a shot, he scores it. It's going to be a great goal. But he didn't score it, so we're all going to look at the other facet of that, where Christie was open to the side of him. So for me, he should have definitely squared it. And I can see, if I was a player, see if I was running beside and I'm open, I gets a pass in and I'm scoring, I'd be grasping my arm.
No, I can understand, I can see it, and yeah, in hindsight, you say pass it because you didn't score it, but I don't think that was a bad position for Kyogo to take a shot on, and I definitely think it was a terrible reaction from Christie. The way that he did it, you've seen plenty of players in that position shout at the teammate going, "Come on, fuck, I was open, the arms go up," sort of thing, but not to the dramatic effect that Christie did it. The arms flailed a couple of times. He shouted over at Kyogo 2-3 times. He was aggressive in it. It wasn't just I was open, guys, you fucked it up sort of thing, and a wee sorry mate. Obviously here at the moment we're 1-0 down, you want to get the equaliser, tensions are flying sort of thing. But for me, his reaction was definitely bang out of order, especially from a player who's known to take shots from about fucking 25 yards out 40 times in the game and sky every single one of them out the park.
Well,
do you think that Christie should have just given him a right aggressive finger wag?
Yes, a stern letter and a warning. Maybe a little WhatsApp group chat would have been suffice.
Well, I tell you what, if Ryan Christie was pulling out a mobile phone during the game, I'd have been grasping my arm.
Well, Chris Sutton would have been, but that's a different story.
Well, carrying on with kind of people who didn't have the best of games. So we've highlighted Abada, and as you rightly say, McGinty, the guy's a young guy. He's foreign. He just came to Scotland, and he's done well so far. He has scored goals, but I think maybe better game management for Postecoglou in that regard, where he could have protected him if he wasn't affecting the game, then take him out and do something else. We didn't have the strongest of benches, right enough, but we did have some players who could maybe come on and do something. So I would put that maybe down to Ange. He should have seen that coming and made some changes. And Paddy, as you said, Turnbull, mate. Turnbull, I said that last week. I think I said the guy's got all the attributes to be a great player. I think maybe the one thing that he obviously doesn't have is like blistering pace. But attitude doesn't cost anything, and he never showed a great attitude in the game. He didn't affect enough change. He didn't press enough. He didn't win enough duels. I felt that Turnbull, as you said, mate, was quite disappointing. McGinty, would you concur with that?
Yeah. As I said earlier, I think the game was lost really for us in the midfield. We weren't getting the foot on the ball. Some to a lesser degree, but similar to the Alkmaar game, we couldn't get the foot on our ball, so we couldn't influence really the tempo and the intensity going forward. I think in hindsight, it's very easy to say that the game overpassed Turnbull as well. I know Paddy mentions that Sorrell came on and he really didn't affect change in the game itself either, but maybe it's a lesson learned for Ange that in some of these games going with the two central midfielders and the attacking midfielder, maybe it's a little bit more pragmatic to play the defensive midfielder to build into the play, to kind of show things up, to try and control the midfield a little bit better. Is that Sorrell from the start, playing for 60 minutes? I don't know. Is it McCarthy from the start, who I assume we've signed for these kind of games. Although I'm aware that I think he's out because also of potential COVID reasons. I think he might be out the team in the last kind of couple of games. But I think in the future, I think Andrew's going to learn from these games. He's definitely going to learn that maybe a more solid midfielder, a midfield three rather than the number 10 attacking version of it to support the strikers, maybe going to be a bit more beneficial to him. And again, obviously we're learning, and Andrew's admitted to learning now that Kyle is more suited to the team now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just to kind of summarise the stats for the game. So we've already touched on possession. For total shots, Rangers had 15 to our 10. Shots on target, they had 4 to our 3. And passing, again, I know that you alluded to it earlier on, we had 85% passing accuracy to Rangers 74. And corners 4 each. And I think this is a new trend as well in the Celtic and Rangers game. There was only 2 bookings, and we collected those 2 bookings. I think the games are maybe becoming a wee bit more mellow. Paddy, we've watched. Well, all 3 of us have watched Celtic and Rangers games for a few decades now, and we've seen some like meaty challenges. Have you noticed that as well? Is it just me, my observation, that things are becoming mellow? There's not a lot of high flying challenges now. What do you think of that, mate?
That's the first I've kind of seen that start for yesterday about the bookings. For me, that Morelos should have been booked. He had a dive early on, and he was just doing his usual horrible man play. Just a horrible wee guy. I can't stand him. He's just a cheat, a dirty wee cheat. But I'll save him for another day. But do you think that's maybe like say Brown being away? Do you know what I mean? You've not got that kind of combative midfielder anymore.
Yeah, it could be down to that. But even last season when Brown was playing, I was noticing like sometimes like you'd finish an Old Firm, you'd finish a Celtic and Rangers game, and you were thinking that didn't really feel that one, you know. There's no blood, no thunder. Um, I don't know if it's a generational thing. You can't really blame it on the foreign players who don't understand the Celtic and Rangers rivalry, because there's been foreign players since going back to the 90s, you know what I mean? And you still had meaty games, derbies back then. It's difficult to kind of pinpoint. Miguel, any thoughts on that?
I think it's definitely a change in football kind of style overall, especially across Europe. You go back to the 90s and the early 2000s, there was still, especially in British football anyway, there's still a lot of kind of hammer throwers in the leagues and stuff like that. I know we always kid on, or not kid on, I know we always say that the Scottish League is a bit of a hammer thrower league. But even in the Celtic and Rangers teams going back 20 odd years, you had the likes of Albert's where he's dropping his knee. They look to play in that sense of a dirty game. They look to hurt you to put that first challenge in the first two or 3 minutes to put you in your place. We would do it as well. I'm not just saying that's the only thing they do. Plenty of teams done that. That used to be a mantra, you know, through the Roy Keane era of football down south. Put a challenge in first, put them in the place, tell them to shut up for the rest of the game. We don't seem to see that more. I think
I'm thinking back to that Barry Robson one. Remember that one? You know,
yeah,
it's like you could do a red card challenge in the first opening minutes and only pick up a yellow for it.
Yeah, you get away with it, kind of set the tone, that kind of thing. And the referee would like to always come out and get his yellow card out early doors and kind of try and set his tone as well. I think football as a whole has definitely changed overall, and I think Rangers, they definitely appreciate that kind of way. Their how do we say it, kind of their dark arts back in the day used to be the McCulloch elbow, the Alberts dropping the knee, the 2-footed stud tackles going in, and likewise we would do equally similar things to them if we could get away with it. But of course, they would always be worse for it. I think their dark arts now though is a lot more of the kind of continental aspect of it, the diving, the trying to pull you in to make a challenge. And I think you definitely saw that with Ruth and Kent. Sorry, Ruth and Morelos, not Kent. Kent was a prick as well, but that's a different story. But Ruth and Morelos were definitely told, go mark and go play against Starfelt and Welsh. You could see what they were doing all game. They were looking to draw fouls. They were looking for contact. Anytime a Rangers player got a contact, they went down like a sack of shit. And I think it was very, very telling. Once they got their goal, they wanted to defend that one goal lead. Or else, and Roof came off quite quickly after that. They were happy enough, job was done, one goal, sit it out. Their job was done. I think that is where football is, generally speaking now, and especially in, as you say, Celtic and Rangers games. It's not about going in hard on tackles and making a name for yourself. It's more about cornering the referee into kicks, getting a player sent off, that kind of finer detail as such.
I think there's definitely going to be an emergency meeting in one of the Masonic lodges somewhere because there was no Rangers penalty and no Celtic man sent off.
They have to do it every so often. It has to look honest, you know.
Aye. Well, on reflection, difficult to kind of soak that in, but Rome wasn't built in a day. We have been kind of won over with the positivity with the performances of Celtic so far. And this week was definitely a tough one. Or sorry, last week was a tough one with AZ Alkmaar. Obviously we get beat by them, but we went through to the Europa League, and now of course the Celtic and Rangers game. That was another one that was going to set the tone for the early part of the season. Unfortunately, we never passed that hurdle, but there's 3 more games to go. So I wouldn't be too downhearted with that. I'm definitely not. Definitely not. We never embarrass ourselves. We're playing away. A lot of new players with Celtic, and we've got a new style. There's a lot to be positive about, or more so, there's a lot of reasons not to get carried away with the negativity. And I'm glad that we've had 24 hours to kind of reflect on this so far. We get a final thought before we move on and wrap up the Celtic and Rangers game?
Yeah, I want to totally agree with you there. I think we all looked at the past kind of week, those 2 games, thinking this was going to be, as we said before, the acid test kind of games coming up, big teams that were playing against Alkmaar and Rangers here in our levels. We didn't get the results we wanted, definitely not, but we did. I think you said it right there, Gavin. We didn't embarrass ourselves. We learnt a lot from these 2 games. I think we learnt a hell of a lot, and especially hearing words from Ange, knowing that he's learnt stuff from these games as well. I think it's still positive. If we'd been beat 3-0 by Alkmaar and lost 4-1 to Rangers, we would have been up in arms. But I think the mood just now, I think for most people, is we kind of understand where we're at. We understand what we're trying to do, and we can see the positives in the high scoring games. And yes, it's possibly being against lower caliber teams, but we can see it happen. We can see it coming. We know why we're not as solid as we are at the backline, per se. But I think I think it's came at a good time. We've got qualification into the group stage of the Europa League. We've got the draw that we'll talk about in a moment, I'm sure. And we've wrapped up the first Celtic Rangers game just in time for a little break for the international time, which I don't think too many players from Celtic are going to be away on international duty. A few will be, but I think it's a good time, especially at the end of the transfer window now coming up tomorrow, that we've got a good solid 10 days to 2 weeks where I think a lot of these players are going to appreciate the hard training and the proper bonding and gelling that they've probably not been able to do. We look at the last 4 or 5 weeks, it's been 2 games a week. There's been 2 days of travel every single week. And so to Holland and Czech Republic and the stuff, even up to Dundee and whatnot. Down in Dundee, but you know what I mean. There's been movement all along. I think the training and actual match training has been probably quite limited. We've got 2 weeks now for these guys to learn everything again, start a little bit fresh, get Starfelt settled in, get the likes of Jota if he comes in or rest. I think it will do as well. It's came out a good time.
Exactly. Well, the Europa League draw. So let's move on to that. So we've got Bayer Leverkusen, we've got Real Betis, and we've got Ferencvaros. So Ferencvaros certainly a team that we're familiar with, and Real Betis there'll be a bit of a kind of a romanticism with that because I believe that we had involvement in their foundation as a club. And Leverkusen were aware of them from last season. Whenever was it last season? Whenever they played Rangers, yeah. And that's when they had it was the previous
Season before.
The previous
when
the
they
curtailment of COVID and stuff. Yeah,
because I'm thinking about Kai Havertz. Havertz played for Leverkusen at that point. and then obviously you had last season with Chelsea. But yeah, so three interesting teams. And Paddy, I was talking to you about like, would you fancy a glamour tie? Maybe the glamour would be Real Betis, so they're based in Seville, of course, and I believe that that's where the final is going to be played. Um, so, what was your reaction whenever you saw our name get drawn out with those three other teams?
Me and McGinty were watching that together. We actually tried to do a wee pod, but it didn't work.
Sorry,
We'll
guys.
mention that.
It just doesn't work.
It didn't work, aye. But no, listen, it was a decent draw. Obviously, Leverkusen's the big name in the group. They've got some brilliant players, well financially backed. Then McGinty was rooting to get Real Betis, and his dream came true. And obviously the last one at the hat was Ferencváros. So the the games have been announced today. Obviously who's playing where, and I think the first game will be Ferencváros at home at the strange time at 3:30.
No, is it?
I think so. Aye.
I thought the Ferencváros game was the double header in the middle.
Maybe it's no Ferencváros in. Sorry, my
There
apologies.
has been a time change and a day change for one of the games, but
To 3:30 afternoon kickoff, which will really upset the season ticket holders who might have
Mm.
to take a day off work. You know what I mean?
I need a whole
Um,
day off work because we all need to go to the pub for a pint beforehand, surely.
Mm. Just the one.
Maybe a second.
McGinty, talk to me about Betis then. So tell me, like, first off, why don't you have one of their tops? And tell me about the Celtic involvement in their foundation, please.
I do have one, and I really should have worn it actually. It's the away one from 2 seasons ago. Nice black number with a gold detail. Sorry, green detailing. But I do have my heart set on buying one of the old style Kappa ones from back in the 90s. They look absolutely brilliant. But Real Betis is, for me, it is a romantic kind of love affair that I've got with them. As a fan, I definitely like them as a football team, and they've got a history and a connection with Celtic. I'm sure a few people are familiar. I'm sure a few people maybe aren't quite familiar. So a very brief thing about Real Betis is that they were formed by a merge of two clubs from Seville at the time, but one of the original clubs, their founding fathers as such, had came to Scotland, and I think he stayed in Dumfries, and he was going to university, and he would always go up to Glasgow to watch Celtic games back in the day. And when he went to Spain, and he was part of the formation of the original club before we know Real Betis is now. They used to blame blue actually, only because it was basically the standard kit colour that you get in Spain just by default. Really batted an eyelid. But he came through and he really took an affinity with Celtic and the colours, and you will remember back in the day Celtic used to play the stripes as well, and he brought that to the club based off the back of Celtic. I think he actually might have asked people from Celtic to send stuff over. Not 100% sure on that connection there, but there's definitely
Fabric and stuff like that for
yeah
the
the
green and
old
white hoops,
fabrics and
yeah.
stuff for the hoops and stuff. So there's definitely a connection there with the clubs as old. And if you look to I think a couple of years later, they end up merging with another team from Seville who became, we're butchering the name here because the team, as it's known now, is Real Betis Balompi or something. Yeah, we use the hands. But the amalgamation, the merger of the two clubs, became Real Betis as we know now, and they adopted the green and white stripes as well on the back of that as well. So there's definitely a connection with Celtic within the Real Betis history there. And if we go back just to the last point, just on the connection, the Real Betis came out, I think it was in 2017, they came out with a special top that they had for their Andalusia Day, which is, I guess, region or the saint from that area. And they honoured it with the hoops that they wore at the time as a special edition shirt. And they were very quick to do all the social media kind of playing up to it, kind of getting the support on that, and they linked in with Celtic again. So they kind of they enjoy bringing that connection up with Celtic whenever they can. So for me, it's definitely a draw that I'm happy to see, where we get to go back to a city that obviously Celtic fans are very familiar with, going back years ago now to the cup final. We've got a club that we're friendly with, and I think it would be a great tournament, a great group stage tournament for all the teams that we're going to be playing against. There's glamour, there's history, there's romance, and all the three ties. But when it comes to real benefits, I think we actually will have a good chance of getting something off them. They're quality side. They've got quality players. You look at Nabil Fekir, Sergio Canales, Mark Bartra, Sydney at the back there as well. They've got some quality players in there who will do damage and can control a game of football from us. But they're not the fastest. They're the oldest, on average, they're the oldest group of players in the squad in the group stage that we're in.
Did
So
they
I think,
finish 10th last season in La Liga?
oh, don't quote me, I couldn't tell you. I think it was higher than that. They had a really good start last season. They had a
Did they
really good
finish
start,
10th,
but I
and how
think
would they get into Europe?
I'd imagine they would have been sixth or fifth to get into Europa League. But they might have got on the back of a cup game or something. I'm not 100% sure.
You may be getting mixed up because I think they're sitting 10th now.
Probably.
Right,
But
right.
then they're only 3 games in.
That would make sense.
But I'm looking forward to the game against Real Betis. I think it'll be a good marker for where we're at. I think it'll be good because we can definitely get points off them in the group stage. But I think it'll also be good when we go to the fans go to Seville. Going to love it. They're going to love it because the two groups of fans and the two clubs are going to embrace each other for what this is, and it's going to be great. I'm going to love it when it happens.
Well,
Yeah.
see when we're talking about last Celtic connection between Celtic and Real Betis. So obviously the other two teams that's in the group, you've got Leverkusen and you've got Ferencváros. So there's a Celtic connection and a Celtic history with the two teams. So obviously Leverkusen, they're going to be seeing a familiar face. That'll be Jeremy Frimpong, who we sold wee Frimpers to Leverkusen for about 15 million, I think, wasn't it? 13.
11 going
We
on
had
13, yeah.
something about 13 we had ones, and obviously, sorry to bring up last season, but Ferencváros was obviously the team that knocked us out of the Europe. So we've got we've got a bit of a grudge match there, if you want to call it. So
Score to settle.
Ferencváros was obviously the game that, for a lot of supporters, that was the straw that broke the camel's back with Mr. Lennon as the manager. Obviously, he never got sacked after that, but really should have been sacked after that. But the two goal scorers that night, Gav, they obviously beat us 2-1. They beat us 2-1 at Celtic Park. The two goal scorers are still actively involved with the team just now. So the first goal scorer was, excuse me, sorry, David Simic. David Seeger, sorry, he was the first goal scorer. And the second goal scorer that night was Tokmak and Gwen, the number 10. And Gwen actually played under Ronnie Dyler at Strømsgodset.
Back in Norway, yeah.
Back in Norway, aye.
Funny how that works out sometimes. Small world and all that.
But they've got a new manager this season. Last season it was Sergei Rebrov, the ex-Ukraine striker, and now they've got the former Dortmund manager, Peter Stoger, who's got a pretty decent rep. So he's a new manager. So they've got a new regime on the go as well. So hopefully we'll be able to exact a bit of revenge on them. That's the team that I'm looking at that we should be taking 6 points off.
Definitely agree. Yeah. Should we looking to do
Should.
Should.
And Leverkusen, do we have any hope against them, mate?
Not a chance. For me, Leverkusen, when we talked about this the other day in the unfortunate podcast that never was, Leverkusen have danger written all over them. And I think the best way that we could describe them is look at what kind of player Frimpong is. And he's probably the weaker one for the attacking fullbacks, the attacking wingers that they have cutting in to support the striker, which is a familiar foe for Scotland on the European Championship groups there with Schick. They are all...
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Sheik, the guy who got like 5 goals in the Euros or something.
Yeah.
The one against David Marshall for about 65 years.
Yeah. He will look to cause a little bit of damage. We all know he can lead a line. He can dominate the team through the middle. But I think both sides on their flanks, you've got Paulinho, is it? And correct me, who's the Diaby on the other side? I think it is. They're dangerous players. Diaby scored a couple of goals already this season. they're dangerous players, and they've got full backs like Becker and Frimpong. We know what Frimpong can do. We know the style of player that he is. I think they're going to be all about that wide playing pace coming down into those flanks and connecting with Schick as well. They're the danger team for us. I would love to get something off them. I think we can. I think we're definitely set because it's always possible to get something off this kind of team. But they're destined to top the group. I think it's between us and Real Betis for second place.
I mean, see, even though Leverkusen's lost a couple of top players, so obviously they lost Havertz to Chelsea, and then this season they lost Bailey, Jamaican winger. He went to Aston Villa.
Leon Bailey.
Leon Bailey,
he went to Aston Villa, and the young English winger that they signed for Leicester, can't remember his name now. He's went back. Who?
Amari Gray.
Damari Gray. He signed for Everton.
Aye.
But I mean, you look at their team and start at the back. You've got Jonathan Tah, German centre half, quality player, big, strong, athletic, brilliant on the ball. You've got Mitchell Bakker at left back, who was the Dutch boy for PSG that we tried to sign before we got. Before we go, what do you call him?
Laxalt.
Julian?
Laxalt. Right. Tried to use his staff there. When they've got Laxalt on loan, obviously they've got Frimpong, Kerim Demirby, German guy, Turkish. Diaby, Paulinho, Bellarabi, and obviously Schick up front, who's going to be the danger man. But they're a quality team. I mean, you would expect that for a top German team. So I mean, they're going to be very technically capable, but they're very fast. They're almost they're a wee bit similar to us in our philosophy this season, albeit we're not exactly at the same level. But they definitely come out and play with an attacking intent as well. But they back that up in every single area. They don't just attack, do you know what I mean? They've got brilliant defence, they've got excellent forwards, they've got midfielders who have got a good combination. They're combative, they're strong, and they're quick. You know what I mean? So we're definitely going to be up against it with Leverkusen.
Yeah, we'll have our work cut out from the way that you've described it. And of course, as you say, Betis, really interesting. We've drew them. I think that'll be our first ever competitive game, probably against Betis.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And yeah, it'll be great to welcome them to Glasgow and for the travelling Celtic support to go to Seville as well. And Ferencváros, as you said, we've got a bit of revenge to hand out to them. So looking forward to it definitely, and it'll be Postecoglou's first venture into Europe as a football coach in the Northern Hemisphere now. So yeah, definitely looking forward to it. Moving on from that, guys. So tomorrow is when the transfer window closes. I'm not wearing my yellow tie tonight, but hopefully that doesn't detract from my enthusiasm for what we're going to be talking about.
Just get your yellow pants on, is that what it is?
I mean, how did you know that?
You guys having a wee thing without me?
No, he's jump out at the front, jump round at the back.
Too graphic, mate. Right. Let's talk about incoming. So the main guy that's been rumoured to join us, and I think it's definitely more of a rumour now. The Greek centre forward. I'm going to make an attempt at his name, Giacomakis. I'm going to try.
Georgios Giacomakis.
Giacomakis. It's either Giacomakis or Giacomakis, one of the two.
Can I just butt in there? We're kind of getting some breaking news that Edwards potentially agreed a move with Crystal Palace, and that's somewhere in the region of 15 to 20 million pound. That's literally just come out there now.
Great. Well, that'll be the direct replacement. Paddy, before I hear your thoughts, McGinty, Giacomakis, so what we know about the guy, I think he's 25 years old. He looks like about 6'1", centre forward. When you look at his CV, his goal scoring record, it doesn't really catch your eye. However, last season, he was the top goal scorer in the Eredivisie. Sometimes the top goal scorer from the Eredivisie has flattered to deceive. We've had a few of them who's left that league and came over to UK, such as we had that Brazilian guy. I think his name is Alfonso Alves, who joined Middlesbrough, and he had a torrid time.
Heerenveen.
That's for, yeah.
Aye.
I think so. I think so.
Aye.
Or was it FC20? I forget. And you had Vincent Janssen, who Tottenham I think bought for about 27 odd million, and he was terrible, absolutely terrible. We've got this other guy. So he had an amazing goal scoring season last year. Scored a lot of penalties. I think it was about 8 or 9 penalties. So tell me, I believe that you might be sceptic about that. Surprise, surprise.
I'll be honest, if we're talking about signing strikers from the Dutch league, then I would still rather that we sign Alfred Finnbogason at this day and age than this Greek boy. I don't see it with him. I'm at the point where I need to trust Ange and what he wants this team to be doing. And by all accounts, what this striker is and how he plays, I could envision how this could fit in. You're talking about a guy who is relatively tall, perhaps a kind of poacher more style rather than a guy who can drive forward with the ball. I think with good support with the likes of Abada and Forrest and Christie, if he stays, although that's another rumour that's coming out just now that he might not be, then these kind of guys can get good connection with the striker, and hopefully this guy would score a lot of goals. However, for me, one season wonder in Dutch football, 26 goals last season, I think he's hit about 29 or 30 goals collectively in the last 7 years before that. It's a wasted 3 million for me. 2.5, 3 million it's rumoured to be. It's madness.
Is it not worth
It's
taking a punt
madness.
on?
No. We've wasted money before on strikers. We've wasted 3 million on Klamala. We've wasted deals on Lasad and Miku. We've had 3.5 million on Marc-Antoine Fortuny 10 years ago. We've had Banguras. We've
Amido
had
Balde as
Mido
well.
Baldes. We've had all these guys where we spent numerous 2 millions, 3 millions, $1.5 million here, and every season or every 2 seasons we collectively all sit here and go, we didn't spend 2.5 million on him, or we didn't spend 3 million on him. We could have got a good striker for 6. I think he's up that bracket. He's 3 million that we're going to waste on a striker who we're going to find out that is not going to be good enough. And I said earlier on in the conversation in the podcast, I think Kyogo's yet Edward's replacement. And if we're signing strikers who are going to basically be behind Kyogo, I'd rather go for somebody else. Somebody a bit younger, a bit more promising, somebody who's maybe got a bit more potential of actually being a success than a one-hit wonder.
Good insight though from our very own Grim Reaper.
Thank
Paddy,
you.
I think you're a wee bit more excited about this guy. So it's not much money. Like, whenever you hear the top goal scorer from the Netherlands, 2.5 million, roughly about that, 2 million. Surely it's worth a punt.
I can't believe how negative he is.
You're welcome.
Do you know what I mean? You're saying it yourself, right? We're going out and spending 2.5 million to 3 million on guys like Klamala, who was the guy before him, Bio. Do you know what I mean? Guys like this who are never going to get a sniff, right? This guy, we don't know too much about him, right? Unless you're a scout or you're tied in with Holland or something, but you just need to look at the stats, right? So start off by just touching on his goal scoring, right? It's not been great by any stretch of the imagination. You look at his full course, right? But the guy was a top goal scorer in the Eredivisie last season for VVV Venlo, who I think get relegated.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He's obviously doing something right. I mean, you look at his videos, right, and you've got goals coming for. There's a good variation of goals. He looks to be strong and central. I mean, he's scoring headers, he's scoring power shots. There's no many tap-ins. He looks to be a wee bit of a bull, which is something that we're missing. It's a different dimension. But I was reading somewhere as well that he's not been very prolific in his career up to date. But the thing that I read was that he's been working very closely with some striking coach who is teaching him, who has been teaching him previous to last season. Obviously, all the facets have been a predominant prolific striker, and he said that this has been a big, massive help to him. And then obviously he goes out and he ends up the top goal scorer in the Eredivisie for basically your equivalent of Hamilton. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can't knock that back for, especially at $2.5 million, and he's 26 and he's coming into his prime, as you would think for a forward player.
I definitely think you can knock that back at $2.5 million for everything that I just said about all the other players that we wasted that kind of money for. We're doing this on one season here. This is madness that we would sign this guy for this kind of money.
McGinty, I hear what you're saying. I'm sorry to interrupt, but if we waited for like 2 seasons, 3 seasons for him to show that consistency, then at
Definitely.
that point it becomes out of our price
No,
range.
I totally get that, and I'm going to throw this one as maybe the last thing I'll say on it, because when he inevitably does sign for us tomorrow, no doubt, I'll back him obviously as we all do for these players. But the other thing and the last thing I want to say about him is, why is it only us and a second tier German team we're interested in? If he's that good, if he's been coached and trained by whoever it is he's got a special coaching for, and if he's done that well comparatively for the team that he's had to be top goal scorer in the Dutch league in the Eredivisie, then why aren't Ajax signing him? Why aren't FC20 signing him? Why not PSV, Feyenoord, anybody else, Utrecht? There's teams there. There's 5 or 6 teams in that league who would be actively challenging for European spots, Champions League spots. Why aren't they interested? There's been no sniff. It's us and Werder Bremen, second German league.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. Although at the same time, you cannot use that as an accurate barometer of the player's qualities. However, draw a line under. In fact, well, one last thing I want to say, and then we'll draw a line. Pardon me, guys. Pardon me. For centre forward, I think it's just one of the positions where you cannot you cannot sell yourself short. For what's at stake for this season, what is it, 40 million guaranteed if we finish top and we go into the Champions League? If you look at the pedigree of the centre forwards that we have employed, going back to like Dembele, um, and then we know what he's doing in Europe right now, and obviously Edouard, yes, Edouard for maybe the first part of his Celtic career, very, very impressive. Not so great right now. Maybe there's other factors at play, but them on their day, very, very impressive players. They were. You would look to them whenever you were in the trenches. They were your guy. You'd be like, give him the ball, and they'll take care of it. That's the only worry for me. With what we've got at stake this season, I was just a wee bit skeptical as to an extent about the guy's CV, and I was thinking, could we have went out and maybe tried to get more of a blue chip signing? That's my only kind of anxiety over it. However, moving on from that, we're rumoured to be getting a young player in on loan from Benfica. I think, correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. 22 years old, Felipe Jota. So he's a Benfica Portuguese winger. Um, he was out on loan to, is it Valladolid last season? Yeah, in Spain.
In Spain, yeah.
Uh-huh. And it doesn't appear to be in Benfica's plans for this season, but they want him to get more experience anyway. So it looks like we're going to be getting him on loan, and there is a rumour that there'll be an additional clause where we can actually buy him as well. I've watched him on YouTube, obviously that great scouting media platform. From the clips of the boy, he definitely looks an entertainer. If he can do it in the SPL, then the fans will definitely take to him. He looks quite slight of frame. But there's certain players who that they can still manage. Like for example, Kyogo, he still manages to do it despite being a wee guy. So this guy does look quite exciting. But we'll wait and see. It could be another Paddy Roberts when Paddy Roberts was good. We never know. Has anyone else had the chance to watch this boy, Jota?
I've not seen
Just
enough of them yet myself, but just on the face of it, if you're signing a 21, 22-year-old from Benfica Youth Academy, you're more than likely getting a decent standard of player for that, because Benfica have been known for the last few years to bring in quality from that age group.
And I think he got massive plaudits for Portugal. I think it might have been under 19s in like a World Cup. He got massive plaudits. I think he was one of the players of the tournament. Certainly, you can have like a great youth career, but whenever you turn professional for the seniors, it doesn't really pan out as you would hope. But the guy, as you said, coming from Benfica, from their youth academy, it's worth checking out. On loan as well, he might be the direct replacement for Ryan Christie, who he may or may not depart. Any other incoming guys that we've heard of, apart from Giakoumakis and Jota?
I don't think so. Obviously, we've signed Scales the other week there as well.
I'm
So
looking
that'll be.
forward to seeing what he's got.
So Mammy, he looks like a big, tall, strong boy. He's obviously left-footed, can be deployed as a centre half. I think we're definitely missing somebody that ilk at the back line. Somebody that's tall, athletic, is going to put himself about a bit. Especially when you look at like Greg Taylor, he's pretty small and diminutive, which isn't always a bad quality, but he's not got much physical presence about him.
Do you think he's got the potential to be a possible cult figure at Celtic Park?
Aye, I think he's going to be sensational.
Brilliant, brilliant. Aye, he's got his physicality very, very imposing. Like if I was like a right winger trying to beat him down the flank, I would be switching it to the left flank. He looks very imposing, very menacing, and he looks as if one of those players. He's that tall, his legs are that long. Where once you think you've got it past him, all he just has to do is stretch out his foot, and he'll nick the ball off you. I'm excited to see what the guy's got. Outgoings though.
The only
Yeah.
one I've heard is outgoings is that possibly Griffiths might be going to Dundee on loan.
Interesting move. Do you think it shows how far his stock has fell that maybe the Hibs of this world are not in for him?
Aye, especially when you look at Kevin Nisbet, he's rumoured to be going to Swansea for about £5 million.
So you would, that's good. That's really good for Hibs.
So you would think that they would have been pushing the boat out to get Griffiths, who's obviously a Hibs fan. He's a natural goal scorer. He's definitely got his personal problems and attitude problems and whatnot, everything else that comes with it. But I think he's played for Dundee before as well, so that could be another kind of previous link to why he's possibly going to go back there. I know James McPake's absolutely desperate to get him there, and I'm pretty sure the majority of us are desperate to see him go.
I think
sorry,
there's sorry. Just try to round up on rumours of the outgoings that I'm hearing tonight. So we're looking at Edouard seems to be getting chased by Crystal Palace's. I think it's what's your boy's name on Twitter that's always doing these things? Fabrizio Romano. He seems to be always the guy in the know. If he says it's nailed on practically. So it seems to be that for just shy of 20 million euros, we seem to be basically doubling our money, and it's probably that Edouard's going to go to Crystal Palace. In other news, not quoted by Fabrizio Romano, is Ryan Christie seemingly being courted by both Burnley and Bournemouth earlier this evening. Story has it that one is offering better money, one is offering the better league as such. So interested to see that those are probably two of the names from last season when Lennon hinted that some players weren't wanting to be here. The other two were predominantly known as to be Ayer and Nicham, who have obviously both left the building. It'll be interesting to see if those two do make exit rows tomorrow. And for me, if they do, fair play to both of them. They've both done their time at Celtic. Christie, I think, has started this season well. We'll excuse yesterday. But I think he started this season well, so hopefully he gets his move if he doesn't want to sign a contract, or the rest of it we get money for him. And Edouard, we didn't expect to have him this long, and it's definitely overdue that he leaves for both sides, us and him. I think it's time that he needs to move on for his own sake and our sake. If both of them leave for me, I want to see Jota come in. I want to see your Greek boy come in. Well, see him come in, but of course, we need a striker to come in some capacity. So the striker comes in, the Greek boy comes in, Jota comes in. For me, the only other position I need to see, if this all pans out, I need to see a centre-back tomorrow as well. At that point, I will be happy.
Do you want a squad player? Do you want a squad player for centre-back, or do you want...
I preferably want an experienced 24, 25, 26-year-old centre-back who will come in and just take control of that centre-back line, because clearly Welsh needs help, and clearly Starfelt's struggling to get going here. Julian, we all love the big Superman French boy that he is, but he has his moments as well. I think we still need somebody just to totally take control. A Mialbi-esque kind of player for me.
And will they be given license to shout like Christie did yesterday, or do you want them to be more
No,
meek?
they can shout like Joe Hart did yesterday and know their place and know their role and don't piss off Kyle because I love that kid.
Well
Repping
said,
the
mate.
different country, but I still love that kid.
Well said. Well said. Paddy, yeah, finishing up on the transfer window. Are you happy with what we've done? The business that we look to be crossing over tomorrow, or anything else that you want to see done?
We've definitely made inroads into signing over the course of the entire transfer window.
It's a big
I think
operation.
it is, mate, especially when you look at, I mean, Angie's only been in for what, 7 or 8 weeks or something. I think he started after like 14 players. You know what I mean? And there's definitely been a mix there of players that he's brought in, and obviously players that the club's brought in, which I'm quite happy with the calibre of players coming. I'd be happy if Edward goes. I think it's time that we just close that book, close the chapter in that book. Sorry, send him away, get whatever we can. I know Man City, PSG, sorry, will be due a selling clause, but I don't care. I'm seeing Anthony Joseph's tweet as well, McGinty, that Christie will be pretty much fully off tomorrow as well. So there's your two out, two in, which is Jota and Yakimakis. But for me, I 100% agree with you. Need a centre back in as well. Be on loan or be good and spend money. I don't care. I want
Yeah,
a centre back.
I was very impressed that we hadn't made any loan deals until perceivably now with Jota. Very impressed with that. I think that sends a good signal to Ange and to the rebuild that we had to do. We're taking it somewhat seriously, even though we've delayed and dragged our heels a little bit with it. We have slowly brought in these players, and it's been great that there's been no loan signs yet. However, I won't be adverse to Jota on loan with the option to buy and a quality centre back on loan, be it option to buy or not, but at least somebody, when it happens, come out and say, great signing for the year now, something to build on and look forward to rectifying as well. Just a little bit of assurance.
Yeah, yeah. Aye, well, Paddy, as you said, he's only Postecoglou. He's only been in the job for about 8 weeks, and Dominic Mackay as well, probably not too shy of that tenure as well. A massive operation for them to bring in as many faces as possible, but to get in the right people, not just any people. Postecoglou was saying that he didn't want to just buy for the sake of it. So a massive rebuilding job, and of course we've got the January transfer window as well, where if we need to try and shore up, depending on how we're looking at that point, then we might be able to do that. But massive job. So yeah, on the whole, quite positive. I'm happy that we've looked to get rid of the deadwood and bring in some players. Guys, on reflection, the next game for Celtic is Celtic and Ross County. That's at Celtic Park. That is on the 11th of September. And in between now and then, we've got the international break. We've got quite a few of our international players away. McGregor, Christie, Turnbull, Abada, Beaton, Juranovic, Kyogo, Rogic, Starfelt, and Connor Hazard for Northern Ireland. So yeah, and McGinty, as you said, it gives Ange Postecoglou much needed time to actually get the players on the training field who are still going to be here and work with them, because he has kind of mentioned that he's not had enough time to kind of gel them in, because we've been playing 2 games every week, so it's certainly taken a toll. A much needed rest for some of the players. But yeah, so over the reflection of today's episodes, we've covered off the post-match review of Celtic and Rangers. I'm hoping for more better results in the future going down that road. We've covered the Europa League draw, and of course we've covered the transfer rumours. But during the international transfer break, during the international break, the podcast will be returning and we'll be covering other topics as well. So we'll try and keep you entertained during that absence of club football for Celtic. So before we finish up for tonight, McGinty, any final parting words?
Um, yeah, well, so for just an opinion on the kind of start of the season, as we say, eight weeks we Ange. I'm positive. I'm usually the negative one of the crowd. I know that. But
No, mate.
never. But no, overall, I'm positive. I'm looking forward to what we do when we come back from the international break. I think Ange is in the driving seat, and I think he deserves the fan support definitely. So I'm excited about the future.
Paddy, if you were to give a report card on Celtic and Ange for the first part of this season, where would you? What would his rating be?
B plus. Well, listen,
No.
he's come in. He's had a hard job to take over. As I said earlier, I think he started off with about 14 players, something like that. He's had to come in. He's had to stable the ship. He's had to negotiate tough European qualifiers. He's managed to get us into the Europa League, albeit after dropping out the Champions League qualification. He's brought in a style of football that's getting us talking, getting us excited. Obviously, the first big acid test, we've lost it, albeit by a fine margin. But I think we get the players in, get them galvanised, and then the next game in the league, we start afresh, carry on through the attacking sense. And then when we get to the next game at Ibrox, we're going to have full capacity crowd. It's going to be a different animal.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. Well put. So, from ourselves to the viewers, thank you very much for watching. And if you can, please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe button, and if you can, share the video with your family, friends, and Celtic supporters. But from the Jungle Gyms, thank you very much. Good night, guys.
Hail, hail, guys. Hail, hail.